everybody, welcome back. And I know the channel has been gone for a little while, but I am so excited to be here. So I actually did a guest appearance on a show, MathPig. And while I was talking to the host of that show, he introduced me to the person that I'm going to introduce to you. His name's Richard Madsen. Richard, how are you doing today?
I'm better than I deserve, boss. Peace and respect to you all. Thank you so much for letting me come on your show, man. Absolutely. I mean, I really appreciate that. And that was really sweet of MathPig.
It really was. I you know, those are the people though that I want to talk to. You know, somebody, if people in the community are having positive discussions and engagements, then I want to elevate that discourse. And I absolutely want to elevate the people who, even though we don't agree, are able to have a respectful, caring, empathetic discussion where the arguments themselves stand or fall on their own merits and not whether or not somebody had a mic drop moment. So cheers to that, man.
I'm probably already disqualified. You should kick me right now. I don't know if I qualify for all that.
Well, it's been a great evening. We'll see you all next week.
Great show. Richard Thanks Madsen. A lot. I get to mirror this, right?
Oh, man. So let's kind of get started. I know that before we recorded, you had kind of said that you wanted to talk a bit about coming out of religion.
Right. So
did you come out of religion and then go back in, or how lead me through here? What exactly about it do you want to talk about?
Okay, so I'm going to be as gentle and delicate as I possibly can, because what I'm about to say in honest answer of your question may be a trigger, an emotional trigger or a PTS trigger for some people. So before I get into any kind of detail about that, I want to put that out there, that I'm going to be talking about unwarranted and unwanted sexual advancement. Okay.
Thank you.
So if you're listening to this show and you have severe problems with it, or even, if you choose to not want to hear this part, I recommend skipping the next 5 minutes of this show. It'll only take less than 5 minutes, though, I promise. And I'm going to begin. I was an altar boy in the Catholic Church, and the priest there started. What do they call it when you're culturing a child into a situation? What do they call that? I forget the word.
That is. Oh my gosh, I'm losing it too. Go ahead.
Well, we'll edit that back in later. Sure. It'll be fine. So he took about a year trying to culture me into a sexual relationship. I thought of him as like my dad. My dad was a war vet. He wasn't there. I didn't know the guy. So I kind of felt adopted by this guy, and I kind of adopted him. Yeah. But the eventuality of it was that at 12 years old, I had to defend myself against sexual advancements.
I'm sorry to hear that.
No, I'm not. Grooming. It got me out of Catholicism.
Grooming is the word. You were being groomed.
Grooming. That's it.
Yeah.
So he was trying to groom me, but my mom raised independent children. I was able to, without being physical or without the situation get physical, I was able to de-escalate the situation and be done with it before anything absolutely terrible happened or it became violent.
That's awesome.
So that made me lose my faith in the Catholic Church. And according to Mom, the Catholic Church was the right church. She was Catholic. So I got out of religion at 12 years old. Okay. Now, if Catholicism's the right church and that priest was someone who should be trusted within the right church, then that puts every preacher everywhere, in my young mind at the time, in an altered position, if you will. So I lost my faith in faith. I could say it that way. I lost all my faith in all the churches, no intention of ever going back. And I don't look at myself as being a religious person now. I think religion is a series of belief systems and actions that a person repeats, not necessarily fully understanding why they even do it. Okay. So I don't think I'm a religious person, if you will. Like I don't have practices that I perform on a regular basis as part of my belief system at all.
But you do take that as a system and not necessarily a deistic, hands-off kind of nebulous religion, or do you? I mean, so okay, let me rephrase that. Do you think that God created the universe and then poofed away? Like, do you think that a deity exists, just a hands-off God?
Yeah, well, that's normal deism. I'm not a deist. I'm a theist.
Okay.
I believe that we are a physical lineage of physical beings, and that's evidentially true in what I understand reality to be when I look at mom, dad, grandma, etc. Mm-hmm. That's how it actually works. And I don't know of any example. You know, you ask a Christian, give evidence to God, and they have the quadruple O God, which necessitates that it's non-corporeal. But other than saying the example, which is begging the question of saying, oh, God has an non-corporeal, a disembodied mind, I know of no other example of a disembodied mind ever. So with a sample size of one, I can't think that's a good, strong case.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially when the sample size is the one that you're trying to defend.
Right, which is why it's begging the question and all that, yeah.
Okay, so you don't think that God is a disembodied mind. You do follow a theism. What is your theism?
All the good names are taken, Eric. I'm sorry, I don't have a cool sounding.
It's okay.
Something that sounds like set in rock or something. I don't have a name. I don't know.
That's okay. How about what are the characteristics of your theism?
Characteristics of my theism. It's that we're talking about an actual physical lineage, that the beings we're talking about are alive today. They're just not presently here. Not that they can't come here. They could if they so choose. Although we can't seem to leave in any kind of great mass under our own power. They would have that ability. That we're talking about planets being terraformed to support a group of us in small groups, like something around 8 billion or 10 billion or whatever it turns out to be.
Okay.
So that the total number of us in the universe increase.
So
if we're a good force, that being a good thing to do.
Can I throw something out there? Would you say that your theism is similar to panspermia from a outside alien kind of entity?
Well, terraforming and planting life forms here is by definition panspermia, but intelligently guided panspermia, not some asteroid, something, whatever.
Okay, so now we've got a layer here.
Right.
So you think that it's the case that we're here because of aliens? And the aliens are there because of an intelligent creator had them do that? Like, but by intelligent designer, do you mean like that their regional government told them to go do it? Or do you mean they have a deity that instructed them? I'm
okay. So I think deity is, or godhood is a matter of lineage, just being the eldest, most knowledgeable, most powerful. I think that's what makes something a god.
Okay,
it's just older than, it's just the first of its kind, and kinds can be made. Okay.
So would that make me
what I see I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm an oldest brother. Does that make me a god?
No, it makes you the oldest brother.
Okay.
If you were the eldest brother everywhere, you would be God.
This is an interesting definition.
Okay, so I in every spiritual story that I've inspected, and every time I go and inspect a new one, I find the same story of the creation of God. Now, Christians aren't willing to admit that within the Bible, but in the context that I've accepted that's consistent and actually addresses.
It takes on. It
solves. takes away the contextual conflicts. They're just not there. It's just the way that it's being read that caused those conflicts. But there is a reading frame where those conflicts don't exist.
Okay.
Without a lot of unnecessary assumptions, without a lot of extra complexity, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
It just doesn't require all of that.
So I do want to put a pin in that, because I think that determining how you came to read holy texts to be partially true or true with a specific viewpoint, well, I think that'd be an interesting conversation. I want to make sure that we flesh out the basis here. That way we're kind of standing on the same page.
I'm counting on your logic. I'm not educated.
Oh, dude, I'm an autodidact. I taught myself. So,
and you tell people this in public. So that's interesting. No, yeah, it's good to admit things that are embarrassing because that shows that you're being honest.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of or embarrassed about.
I'm making jokes, Eric.
I got you.
It's a joke.
Sorry, I'm passionate about this. This is my jam. This is what I love. So here's my concern. My concern right now is Richard an atheist, and he has just redefined godhood to be a different definition of the aliens that put us here. You know, are you an atheist?
It's interesting.
Just redefined God.
I don't know. Define what an atheist is.
Sure. An atheist rejects the assertion that a God exists.
Okay, I accept the assertion that a God exists.
And the interesting thing there is, and the longer that I've done this, the more I've realized that it is way more interesting to find out what the person you're talking to means when they say the word God. Because if you define your God as something tangible in front of you, if I think that God is this glass of water, then
God exists.
Then God exists, sure. And this is a terrible definition for God.
It's fine. I get the example.
Yeah,
I think most people get the example.
Absolutely, but the second part is really important. It's a terrible definition for God because it muddies the water, right?
Right.
And so what I'm kind of wondering is, you know, you have your definition for God, and so is your definition for God a good one? And how is that furthering the discourse? Because if we can just replace the word God with aliens, then we're no longer having a theistic conversation.
Okay, so if I'm telling the truth, and if the text is correct about what the truth is, and I'm understanding the text correctly and speaking it correctly, then it will not elevate the discourse. In fact, it will never be popular until these things happen. So although I see that description of God in every spiritual expression of an ancient origin, which says there is a God of whatever, I take my definition from that. It's not my idea of what God is or should be, but it's a universal description that I see throughout all of these different works within a certain reading frame that I've adopted.
Sure.
So I'm not making the definition. I'm taking the definition from the text. In fact, I didn't make the reading frame either. I just accepted it.
Okay. So then let's kind of dive in a little bit. You're obviously reading different religious texts that obviously disagree with each other, right? But the framework that you're applying, do you think that the God of even within Abrahamic faiths, do you think that those different holy texts all, when read literally, all mesh together?
Well, we're going to get into problems very, very soon about what the word literal means and what literary means. And we're going to get into problems about the difference between the text and the practitioner and the context that different groups adopt. Because, I mean, I can say there's 22,000 plus, maybe I've heard a number as high as 80,000 different discernible Christian denominations so far as their doctrinal views are concerned and differences between doctrinal views. And actually, I don't have to justify all of that, which would be insane. But at the same time, it's only societal differences and ideals of what societies adopt as what is and what is not important that necessitates these stories be different. So if someone says to me, you've already thrown away 99.99% of gods because you've accepted Yahweh, I say, well, actually, no, you're making an assumption and you're taking advantage of my personal pride and my prejudice toward others, and I have not rejected or accepted them. Nor do I have to accept the interpretation of the practitioner from within that spiritual story, but instead I would study it myself and see if it fits the context I've adopted or it does not.
Okay. How are you avoiding confirmation bias?
How am I avoiding confirmation bias? Well, no one avoids confirmation bias. We do the best that we can to avoid it whenever we can.
Sure.
So what I try to do, and of course I'm a human being, so I can't possibly be perfect in this.
No one's asking
what I try to do is where I find something falsifiable, I'll try to falsify it. Okay. And what I look for is the same way that I would judge anything in its import or its relevance. I would look for consistency, evidence, where expected evidence to be. You know, that whole laundry list of how we judge things that are not here in our physical presence.
Okay. Let me throw a couple things out there then, and let's see if we run them through the filter, how it comes out.
Sure.
Miracle claims.
Could be fun.
Yeah, miracle claims. Healing the sick, and regrowing limbs, rising from the dead, multiplying bread and fishes, as you know, in the Bible.
What limbs are regrown in the Bible?
No, that one's
there are
not
none.
in the Bible. No.
No, in fact, you're not going to find it in any. You're not going to find that literally explained in any religion on the planet.
I know,
because that's not what the story is about.
Hold on, no, I know that in Egyptian mythology, I forget which god it was, but he had his head lopped off.
No, that's a god. No, that's not the same thing.
Okay, gods play by different rules than people.
No. When we need a society to understand what a god is trying to say, the god may do impossible things that we could never actually do or see.
How do you know that to be true?
Well, because there are certain things you can't express using physical reality.
Like what?
Math.
I can absolutely express.
Philosophy, emotions. I don't know. I suppose there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to use physical examples to understand or express a non-physical thing.
So you're talking about concepts, and
yeah, or anything that's just too small to see. Like I've never seen a Kinnison walking motor. Doesn't mean I think that they're not real. Well, I suppose if I had good enough equipment, I might actually see one.
I think we're starting to dip into the fuzz a little bit here, right? There's this nebulous idea that a concept is necessarily tangible, physical, or not.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. Mathematics, right? You can have any language. We've tested math and we use math to describe the world around us, right?
Right.
It is definitionally true, right? 1 = 1 because that's how we have defined it as such. It is a tool that we use in the same way that a ruler, or a meter is only so long. We've defined it as such. Now, just because it's useful doesn't mean that it correlates to a thing that is true in the world, right?
I think math was a bad example, and I shouldn't have included in that list when I was just spewing stuff.
No, that's okay. There's a really, really great example in one of my favorite Terry Pratchett books. Do you ever read Terry Pratchett?
I've never read. I only read religious stuff.
Oh, dude. Definitely check out Terry Pratchett. there's this character of death, and that character of death at the end of the Hogfather says, take the entirety of the universe and grind it up and sieve it through the
Oh, I've heard this one.
the smallest sieve, and find me one atom of justice.
Right.
Right. Just because it's a concept doesn't mean that I'm going to find it in the physical world. So
Right.
what we've done is we've created a map, right? We have a representation of an idea. You can have
Sure.
maps to places that are real and maps to places that are not real, right? I can write you a nice big map of Narnia or of Middle Earth,
Sure.
but I can't take you there. But I can also
Right.
show you a map of your neighborhood, right? You have come to this place where you have this concept of a God, right? And we have these descriptors. So that's the map. And
Okay.
I can take all of those different, sure, no problem in the context that you're giving it, right? If the Bible's true, then it's true, right? If we're going to throw out those tautologies. Now, what I want to do is I want you to take me to the place. I want to see that this concept of the God that you have correlates to the real world, or whether or not it belongs with Narnia or Middle Earth.
Right. Okay. That's fair. Okay. I have flesh.
Yes.
I understand that spiritual expression says our entire lineage, all the way back to that which we would call God, has flesh. So we have at least an example of us having flesh.
Okay. Our entire lineage back to that which we would call God. Do you believe in evolution by natural selection or speciation through natural selection?
I think it must have happened at some point. I think that's unavoidable. Where it happened, I have absolutely no idea.
So is it possible that the God concept that you have is a single-celled organism? Or a self-replicating protein, like or an acid like RNA, right? If you have a something that is self-replicating,
right,
and you can get the building blocks from there, does that mean that God is just something in nature that's self-replicating? Like, could that God be a single-celled organism?
I don't want to get into this conversation, but it kind of tweaks my melon when people say that it's self-assembling. Sure, it's self-assembling if you put them in the correct order that you know will assemble, and you put them in proximity, they'll assemble. But that's another topic, and it's not answering your question. Could you repeat it? It just really, because I hear that so much and it tweaks me. Well, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. You have to have those pieces that would be put together for them to be put together, right? You have
so
to.
You were basically saying, can God be an accident of a one-celled animal? And I'm sure that it was somewhere.
Well, I'm not even asking about an accident. I'm asking, could that God be a single-celled organism?
I would not call the first life form that is single-celled God, because it lacks some aspects that I have that make me greater. Hold on. Like consciousness.
Oh, so does God have to be conscious?
Yeah, God would have to be conscious.
Well, so if God has to be conscious, and we could trace our lineage back to single-celled organisms, does that mean that there was at one point a conscious single-celled organism, or do you think that...
No, I'm not trying to say that.
Okay, what about somewhere along the way, like maybe a proto-human? We
could skip a lot of this if you just let me tell the story.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, this is what I see described. This is what I see described in religious text everywhere, including the Bible.
Okay, hit me.
That abiogenesis happened somewhere, sometime. And by somewhere, I mean, I literally have, 14 billion years ago. I don't even know. Okay. And that started an evolutionary process which resulted in consciousness. Now, emotional states, I have no idea. It doesn't seem to talk much about that. Okay. But those intelligent moved forward in technology, became able to replicate life forms. They became able to manipulate and recreate the process of evolution, and they started making their own stuff, just like we're starting to mess with stuff now. Okay?
Okay.
But over time, they got very, very good at that, which put them, 10,000 plus years ahead of where we are now as a basis. Okay? And they had workers that they invented. Now, whether that's from their own genetic material or from scratch, it doesn't really matter to me at that point. It's just a different life form than themselves that they were able to control for work reasons. Okay, so they created a retirement plan, and I think that they wanted certain things out of this slave animal, so they were making changes and improvements, and somewhere in the story, somewhere in that time, I can't tell when at all. But they made a batch, and they impregnated their females with this material, and they got a batch that they decided they didn't want. And they had them all slaughtered, but one of them, its progenitor mother, which is not its genetic mother, by the way. It's some of the genetics would be shared, but not 100% the same animal. Its progenitor mother actually sent it down the river in a little basket. It waterproofed a basket and literally sent it down the river to protect it, which is not smart, by the way. But apparently, the king, or whatever they want to call that leadership position person, had a daughter who found the basket with the baby in it and thought it was cute and shouldn't have kept it, but did. But then somehow it, and I think this is the reason it was rejected as a group of slave class, and why most of them were slaughtered and only literally one escaped, was because it was too darn smart. So they bring it into the household of the king, and they raise it up in government and technology, and I probably just kind of a weird pet at first, sort of a thing, but then it kind of was way too smart to just be a pet. So they actually brought it up in governance and technology and etc.
That's definitely a unique take on the Moses story.
Right, but I'd never had to use the word Moses.
No, but but
you're right.
You got enough. How did you get to the point where you think that is a true thing that happened?
You got about 30 hours.
Hit me with the highlights. Hit me with your best. How do you know that that's a thing that happened?
Hit me with the highlights.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. So I accept the ideas universally because I see them universally. That is, it's consistency. Okay.
Okay. Like what?
Well, it's Gilgamesh. It's Moses. It's shoot. I'm not good at Hindu names.
It's okay.
Anyway, it's one of the higher Hindu gods. You just see it again and again and again and again. And everywhere I look, I find the story. And I find all the stories everywhere. It just takes a reading frame. Anyway, okay, so I have universality, right? I have consistency. Within each work. I have... Go ahead.
Sure. So let's take that claim and let's bring up another possibility. And that other possibility is that early tribes of people who were unable to explain the world around them told stories. And the stories that they told about those things that they don't understand were passed down largely not just because they helped explain things that they don't know, but maybe also to help teach lessons and things like that, eventually codifying those things and traveling with them along trade routes. And as we spread out throughout this planet, Some of them worked their way that way. Others are just more universals, right? Flooding is a thing that happens. So it's not uncommon to see flood stories in native traditions that have maybe not even ever experienced each other. But the fact that flooding is a thing that happens, fires and the rise and fall of groups and leadership, those things are so broadly found that it's understandable to see, those similarities. How did you come to the point where you think that it is more likely that these cultures poorly recorded this story that you've given versus those cultures creating stories to describe themselves? They're inherently tied to their identity, and I don't mean that in a cruel and crass way. I think that stories are important.
No, it's just the truth of it.
Yeah, and
right on.
And those are very, very important to identity. That doesn't make them true, right? In the same way, I'll give you an awesome example. You can be gaslit into believing something about yourself that's not true, right? You can have a partner that can say, "Oh, Richard is just so clumsy," and he just forgets everything.
Man, I've seen that happen to people. It's terrible.
It is. And you can believe that it's true about yourself, and that you can actually wrap that into your identity. Is it true? No. Do you believe it? Yes. Is that important?
Yes.
Absolutely. Do we have these cultures that create these stories about themselves? Absolutely. That doesn't make those stories true.
Right.
So how did you come to the conclusion that that story is true versus it being a myth that has been perpetuated by a culture?
The entire way that you're looking at the text, and yes, it's true that societies that don't agree on certain things are not societies, and yes, it increases survivability and also prosperity within a tribe to agree on principal matters.
Sure.
So of course you're right; those things are useful. I'm not saying those things aren't useful. I'm saying that you've adopted a Christian reading text, a reading frame of the text that's making you say that, and I don't even adopt that reading frame, that I have to contest that within the view that I have. But instead, what I think the stories are is using sometimes real and sometimes fabricated history, sometimes to actual animals and sometimes fabricated imaginary animals, to express to us something from what we can see or at least imagine, to explain something that has not yet happened.
Prophecy.
So I don't think they have historical value, but they are animistic, describing a different paradigm.
So
it's sort of not a question to me.
I want to try.
It's not the right thing to ask.
Okay. I want to try and rephrase this in a way that is a little easier to chew on.
Okay.
And there are a couple of things that you brought up that are kind of fuzzy for me.
Okay.
One of those is things that have not yet happened.
Right, prophecy.
Right, prophecy. So do you believe that there are stories being used as prophecy do you believe in prophecy? Let's start there.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Could you give me an example?
Things that haven't happened yet. And if they never happen, they're not prophecy. It's just a bunch of made up stuff.
Okay. Would you agree that if it is sufficiently vague, that we can just wait until something like that happens, that it could just be an eventuality? Right. I
wouldn't even say it had to be all that vague. I mean, I've seen religious people take things that aren't all that vague, twist it to where they want it, make it fit the current situation, and claim the prophecy fulfilled.
Well, and in that, I would say that is that's even easier to dismiss. But let's say I were to write down that there's going to be a market collapse, and I just wait. And eventually, when there is a market collapse, then I go, see, my prophecy was true.
Right.
I didn't have any.
Which is why prophecies would be required to absolutely unable for us to perform them or for them to happen naturally.
Okay.
By definition, they have to be outside of our ability range. and outside of the range of the naturalistic environment that is around us.
Okay.
It would have to be caused. It would have to be caused, in other words.
So if you believe in prophecy,
Yes.
then do you have any examples of prophecy?
Yes.
Okay. What kind of examples?
Do you want me to run through the story of end times with you? Is that what you mean? Or do you want me to find something that we can't have done that has not yet happened but is going to happen? Because I have one of those.
Well, so the former, I think, leads to a different question, but the latter, I think, is pure speculation. If we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet, then...
No, it's definitely going to happen. We don't have a choice now.
Well, I think we... Let me back up just a little bit.
Okay.
Let's put a pin in the thing that you think is going to happen and start with things that have been predicted, that were impossible to be predicted, that have happened, which backs up your assertion that prophecies are things that are true, or things that happen.
But we're going to have to resort to things very vague to fulfill that.
Okay. So if we already agreed if it's sufficiently vague, then it's not very useful. So if
absolutely.
If the only prophecies that you can give me as an example are sufficiently vague, then why are you convinced?
Well, since you haven't heard it, how do you know it's sufficiently vague?
You said vague, and so I was just bouncing.
No. I was commenting on something you said.
Oh, okay.
I did not say what I have is vague, not at all.
Could you give me the prophecy? Let's look at it.
Sure. Okay. So under the view, and I'll just give you a real quick overview. Under the view that these things are for those who don't believe, because believers are already okay according to their own religion. Okay?
Sure.
So the kind of thing that a non-believer would assign value to is something they could sense with their own senses and experience themselves. So the requirement is that these be physical things that can be sensed by the individual from their perspective using relatively normal senses, not needing any extra perception whatsoever. So by that definition, physical. And what I see described are physical things because that's what we needed, okay? So I don't think there's any magic involved in it, actually, as a lot of people might profess. Okay. So in order that these things be physical and not kill us, they have to be within our sight, but not directly on our person, for instance. If the prophecy was a 57-pound boulder dropping at 62 feet per second or whatever it is, and the prophecy was it lands on your head, it's not going to matter because it's going to kill you. Okay, so it didn't do you any good.
Well,
all right, so... What's that?
It depends. If you're getting the prophecy as it's falling on my head, then I would agree with you. But if I found out a week before it happened, that'd be pretty darn useful.
Yeah, so if you could sidestep it. But that's what I said. If it fell on your head and its purpose was to change your mind about something, well, it changed your mind, all right.
Okay. So
just not in the way that it would be intended. Okay, so they have to be physical things, and they have to be not killing you to be effective, okay?
Okay.
All right. So understanding, and I could go definitionally through the list, but I'm kind of going to skip over that in the interest of time.
Yeah, I would just like a few examples.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying I would just like a few examples. That's all.
Well, I think I only need to give you one right now, and that's going to be too time consuming. You're not going to want another one, although I could give you several things. But okay, so.
I mean, I would like to investigate the thing that you're talking about instead of going around it, right? We've gone around and around.
Oh, that's not fair. I'm not trying to do that.
No. But we're both engaging in talking about something at a higher level. We're saying, if the thing is, matching these criteria, and we're going over all of that, there's use to it. I kind of want to sink my teeth into it.
Sure. Okay.
So what is this prophecy? If it takes 5 hours to give, then I don't think it's a very good prophecy.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I just have to Okay, Christians say miracle, magic, magic, magic. I'm not saying miracle magic. I'm just saying physical stuff that people will see.
I think
that's all I'm saying.
I think if you can see the future, that's magic.
Well, I think the future's written in the book, and you could call that magic if you want, but I think it's just understanding and intellect and intelligence and knowledge. I don't think it's magic.
Okay.
But anyway, okay. So I would go through all the definitional reasons why I think that this is what the story is saying, but I'm just going to give you the overview instead in the interest of time.
Okay.
Understanding that the words Ark of the Covenant should be translated to mean heaven.
Why?
Understanding that, what?
Why?
Can I just do the story real quick and then we'll go into all the definitions?
Yeah, if it's real quick, go for it.
It's fairly quick.
Okay.
Understanding that the statue in Jericho, Dagon, is actually the constellation Dagon. It's talking about a constellation. Understanding that constellations used to be important, but they lose their importance. Then they regain their importance because of astronomy and actual stuff that we're learning today. And then understanding that it losing its head and hands means that we will not be able to see those three particular stars. Okay? And for a length of time, we can't see them for a millisecond. We won't be able to see them for months. And understanding that in 2013, I started looking for something that might block those three stars continuously that I would be able to see with my naked eye. So I was just using my naked eye to try to sense it. Okay.
Okay.
Had I bought a telescope, I would have found comet C2017. That's the year it was found, 2017, K2 pan-stars. If I had bought a really good telescope, I could have found it because I was looking for it. So is it that is very, very specifically triangulated on those three stars mentioned in the story that will block our view, and not just for a millisecond, but for months. And should that happen, and NASA knows it's going to happen, that's public information now, is, I think, showing that part of that prophecy is plausible to believe that that's what it means.
Okay, so you're saying that you read a prophecy that if I give you the definitions that you want, that it foretold that three stars in the sky would be not visible to the naked eye.
From this point of view, for a length of time.
Okay. I guess my first question is, does prophecy need to be useful? And it doesn't have to be. It just needs to predict the future accurately in a way that could be falsified, and you can show that it was predicted. But that feels very weak.
Okay.
That feels very, very weak.
All right.
So, do you got any others?
Well, I'm wondering why it's weak.
Sure. If you could buy a telescope and see those stars that you're saying disappeared out of the sky.
No, you can see the stars right now with the naked eye, and they are not yet blocked from our view.
Okay, so is this an example of a prophecy that has happened, or one that is going to happen?
It is going to happen.
Okay.
It has not yet been completed.
Okay. Can you give me an example of a prophecy that has already happened?
A prophecy that has already happened, and I'm assuming you mean for the people on this earth. I don't think that any of them have happened.
Okay. So,
I mean, except for the count of people on the earth, that has happened. There's a bunch of us, but like nothing that a person would consider impressive or couldn't be natural.
Sure, convincing.
Or needs predicted or wouldn't happen eventually.
Okay. So I feel like we're going far afield, and I want to try and rein us in just a little bit. because it's
Okay.
What it's doing is kind of like a balloon. We've let a lot of string out, and we've followed the current of the wind to get us to where we're at. But where we're tied down is this idea of prophecy. You believe that prophecy is a thing, and your example is something that we should be able to test. And you're saying that one of those prophecies is that 3 stars would be blocked from our view of the sky in the future. Where is this prophecy found?
It's you can just reference it looking for the word Dagon. It's the only time it appears in the Bible is in that story.
Okay. Tell me about the story.
Well, the story is when the enemy takes the Ark of the Covenant, they put it in the house of Dagon, which most people interpret to mean the temple that Dagon is in. But I take to mean the limits of the constellation Dagon. That's its house. We use that same term for more than just a temple or a home.
Okay. So,
and then
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I please go ahead.
Okay, so while the Ark of the Covenant is in the house of Dagon, Dagon falls off of his the elevated resting place. Okay, and of course, all the people think it's magic, and they go, "Oh, look, the Ark of the Covenant, the Jews are right," and stuff. That's all part of the story too, but that's more like a religious context than it is what the story is really about. So then when it loses its stature a second time, it loses parts of its physical self, its head and hands. So since we're talking about a constellation, and we're talking about constellations from only this point of view and none other, they wouldn't even look the same. And we're talking about a 16 light minute orbit. Then that would have to be for something to block our view of those 3 particular stars, which are not equidistant. They're not. They just look like they're on a flat plane to us. They're not. Mm-hmm. Then that would take something of a very, very specific trajectory, and that trajectory would be have to head right into toward our solar system, and from almost perfectly astronomical north, which those stars are right beside the north spot, right beside Polaris. And it would have to be bright enough and sublimating enough that the human eye could see it, and it would block out all 3 of those stars simultaneously for a good length of time.
So I'm doing a quick search here for the Dagon constellation. Could you spell Dagon for me?
Dagon.
Okay.
It became Poseidon and now Draco. It's the same as Draco.
Okay. So let's see here. Okay. Actually, let me find a different way to approach this. This feels very tenuous. It feels tenuous because, number one, I don't think that you have reason to interpret it as a constellation. I think that it is a story, and that story served a purpose. But if you redefine things enough, I'm sure you can get these, but I feel like we're starting to get into beautiful mind territory.
Actually, I think it's easier to use the definitions to describe this than it is to describe Judaism or Christianity or Hinduism. Or anything. I'm not Hindu, Islam.
Okay, so when they say the Ark of the Covenant, you think it is more likely that they mean heaven and they're just using hidden words than the Ark of the Covenant.
No. See,
if I were to go back in time to the authors, I think that they would be describing the thing that they wrote down, because if they wanted to talk about a constellation, they had the language to do so.
Sure.
What this is hidden meanings. And I have no reason to think that there are hidden meanings in holy books. It's the same reason.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to Muslims who said,
why not?
Because I think they're limited to the people who wrote them. I don't think there's a greater intelligence who's hiding secret messages. I think that is
That would be consistent with your beliefs. Yeah.
Well, and I think that it's also consistent with who we are as what we are as a species, right? We find patterns. We're pattern-seeking machines.
Sure, of course.
We're evolved this way. I think that it is more likely that you are finding a pattern that is not there than one that was intentionally created that you stumbled upon and discovered. Because
I can't say that. I can't say I discovered it. That would be a huge claim. No, there's no way I'd say that.
Okay.
But anyway, I see your point.
Yeah, I think that you've come across a pattern, and that pattern is it's just what we do. That said, I don't see any reason to grant the things that you want to grant.
Okay.
So let me give you an example. If by Ark of the Covenant you mean heaven, what the hell does that mean? Is heaven a place?
What do you mean? What does it mean?
Yeah, is heaven a place?
I'm sorry. Yeah, what I see described in all of the texts is that heaven has physicality. Of course, it has, consciousness, emotionality because of what beings are in it, but it has physicality as well.
Okay. Something having physicality is a very, very fluid word, and I don't like it at all.
Okay.
You have physicality, and the room you're in have physicality. That doesn't mean you are a room.
Yes. That's true.
Right? So is the Ark of the Covenant, as described in the Bible, which is where you pulled it from, or Torah, is that a thing or is that a place? Because it's described as a thing, not a place.
Well, I think we're right back to the maps that you pointed out.
Exactly.
But even if I constructed a statue as described in the text, it's not necessarily the statue that's the important thing. It's kind of the map of Middle Earth to the reality that exists, which is not Middle Earth. So it is entirely possible that you could be completely correct that people even built one or even several of them. I don't care. I think it's irrelevant what people did based on the text compared to the text. But if you're asking me for the evidence that it's describing a physicality of something, it gives a shape, it gives comparative sizes, it gives a hard standard size, it gives coloration, It gives accoutrement.
Perfect. So we're agreeing that the Ark of the Covenant, by your definition, is a thing.
No, I'm saying heaven is a real thing, and the Ark of the Covenant is only a description thereof.
Okay.
I don't care about statues.
I don't either.
Okay.
And I also don't think that the Ark of the Covenant was a thing that existed. I think it's a story.
Yeah, it doesn't matter either way.
Yes, it does. It absolutely matters. I either can go to Middle Earth or I can't. I either can go to Hogwarts to learn about witchcraft and wizardry, or I can't.
Hold on a second. What you just said is it's important if someone built a soundstage of Middle Earth. No, it's not. Just because you can make a replicate of it based on a description of it doesn't make the place real.
I don't know where you got that from. I want
when you said it's important.
Yeah, that it's real. It's important that what we're talking about.
That the statue is real.
Well, yes. Absolutely.
Okay, why?
Because
why is it important if the statue is real or not?
Because if it's a work of fiction, then I wanted to stop wasting my time.
I'm saying the statue is nothing more than a soundstage for the play to be held on.
What does that even mean?
It's not the actual place.
You need to show that there's a place. We're way off here. So you're appealing to smoke to justify the lack of a fire. I don't even. Let's try this again.
Go ahead.
I don't believe that the Ark of the Covenant, as described in the Bible, is a statue that existed or a thing that existed. I think that the time to believe that is when we have evidence for it. And I think that the fact that there are fictional stories does not back up the claim that it was a thing that happened. you need to have evidence of that claim to justify it.
Right.
So what evidence do you have that the writers of the Bible or Torah were describing something that mapped to reality? And then how did you put on top of that the framework that they were speaking in secret codes? Because that is crazy. That is so crazy. No, it totally is. It's
well. Tell me which is more crazy: believing that religious people are biased, yet adopting their reading frame about what they're most biased about. That I might call crazy, but that's definitely what religious peoples and scholars and secularists do. They adopt the religious reading frame knowing that the religious people are biased.
That's because
So when I have to argue against a traditional reading frame, I think that's kind of self-defeating, actually, that someone would even say simultaneously that they don't believe it's true, but make me adhere to it.
So let me try and find a parallel here, right? Have you read Harry Potter? Or any of the Harry Potter books? No. Okay.
No.
How about any of the Lord of the Rings?
I was quite serious when I said I've never read for entertainment in my life. I was quite serious when I said it.
Okay.
Now, if you want to talk about Haynes manuals or what a Chilton's is or how to tear apart a transmission, we'll talk all day.
Sure. So,
okay.
You understand that fiction exists?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that that fiction describes things that do not map to reality.
Are you saying by necessity no fiction can map to reality?
By definition, fiction does not map to reality.
Oh, I wouldn't say that's true at all.
Okay, so is there a Middle Earth that you can that exists that we can go to?
No, but there could be a story of morality that I can derive morality from, like Goldilocks, respect other people's stuff. And it doesn't necessitate any talking bears or girls lost in the German woods.
And it also doesn't get you to any truth claims.
Is morality important? There's a truth claim. I could say morality is important.
No, the claim would be that X is moral. Right? We're moving the goalposts.
I'll make the claim that respecting other people's goods and privacy is a moral thing to do. There you go.
Perfect.
Okay.
So
it's completely based on a fiction that applies to reality.
So if I give you a story, and that story teaches the lesson that respecting people's things are true, or that respecting people's things are good is true.
Mm-hmm.
The story that I gave you, is that story true? No, right?
In the way that it describes some metric acceptable by society, yes, it does describe it.
Okay.
That's how it's true. Is it historically accurate? No.
It's also not true.
Well, it depends on what you mean by true. Is it a useful fiction?
No, I don't care if it's useful fiction. I care about whether or not it maps to reality. You're throwing out the mapping to reality to find its usefulness. I don't care about its utilitarian value. I mean, that's like me telling children, right? I come from Hispanic origins, and there are stories, right, of the kukui,
chupacabra,
the chupacabra, yeah, right, the La Llorona, right, this woman, the ghost of a woman that'll drown you if you get too close to the river, when it's getting late at night, right? These are all stories.
People from drowning, right?
I don't care that it kept people from drowning. I want to know if the La Llorona ghost is a real thing. And what
I'd say no.
Okay. Are you making any claims about the actual world that we're in?
Yes, I am.
So that's perfect. The claim that you're making is that there's a prophecy, and that prophecy is that 3 stars are going to disappear from the sky. And
no, that's not what I said.
Okay. Or for a certain amount of time, they're going to not be visible to the naked eye?
Right. From our perspective, with the normal functioning human eye, we will not be able to detect them because something nearer, brighter is in our way.
Okay.
For a length of time.
Okay. I really don't see that as evidence to back up the idea that this work of fiction predicted anything.
Right.
At all. I think that it's a stretch, and it's a stretch that I think is reasonable to say, why should I believe that? Right? Who brought this up? Who originally? Right? You said you weren't the person. Who's the person?
I'm sorry?
You said you weren't the person who discovered this prophecy. Who's the person who discovered this prophecy?
Who's the person? No, it's written in the text. I was shown a reading frame. When I read the text, it reads that way through that reading frame.
Okay, who showed you this reading frame?
Not me.
Okay, who?
No preacher, no movie, no video, no book, no.
Okay, who?
But also not me, because I didn't have the background. I'd never studied any of religious stories, and I didn't care about them.
Okay, so you didn't learn this from a person. This is something that you made up.
No, I don't even have the background to have made it up.
How so?
And it having predictive. What do you mean, how so?
You can be coincidentally
had,
right about something, right?
Since it had predictive power within the text that I had never read in my life, and as far as I know, no one had ever read to me, even in fine detail throughout the text, then I think that at least consistently within the text, the reading frame does work.
No, it doesn't. Unless
Why not?
Because unless you're talking about a tautology, which I don't care about.
I don't know what tautology means. I don't understand.
Okay, if I believe, then I believe. Right? If
that's not what I'm saying. No.
If you believe the Bible were true, then you would believe that the stories in the Bible were true, right? That's a tautology.
Would be okay.
It's a circle.
Gotcha.
Right?
Right.
And so what you're saying is, if your reading is true, then it's true. Either you're talking about a tautology, or what you're giving me is something without substance or evidence. I don't know why you would.
What would you consider evidence?
Sure. A version of the Torah where you were to say, where you could point out and go, hey, this story was completely taken out of context. But a context that fits where it goes, hey, I'm talking about this constellation, and that you wouldn't bring up head and hands. You would say it would become not visible to the naked eye, right? Because otherwise, there's no reason to think that that's the case. And also, if you bought a telescope and you could still see them, it is just so infinitesimally small that the chances that.
You know, the head and hands of whatever animal in the constellation has never changed.
I don't care.
Okay, so it's not inconsistent or particular to a time.
So let me. This is really tough.
Since there's infinite directions in space, and it says blocks our view for not 3 seconds, but for months. Would be required here.
So
then it has to be one specific direction in outer space, and from our perspective, which is super specific, especially since things change course slightly as they get closer to gravity wells. Like, that's really, really specific.
I think we should just bring it up. After the Philistines had captured the Ark of God, they took it to Ebenezer to Ashdod, carried it into the temple of Dagon, and set it beside his statue.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, where in there do you see context to say that they're talking about a constellation? Where in there do you see the context that the Ark of God means a place and not an actual thing? Because you're taking a story.
It is an actual thing that people could go to if they were able. I didn't say it's a thing like a solid thing.
Okay. Again,
so there's a place inside of it.
Again, you're blending thing in place.
Okay. I thought you were.
No,
I just
no.
misunderstood you. I'm sorry.
No worries. That's okay.
My fault.
No, I think that people don't have this kind of conversation very often, and because this conversation
I think not.
Well, and because this kind of conversation isn't addressed very often, we don't really have the structure that.
It's okay. We can work on it.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing. I'm meeting you where you're at. I think that you're wrong. And I'll tell you why I think that you're wrong. I think that you're wrong because you have a story that's completely taken out of context, that you would have to change definitions of things to be true.
How do you know what's the right context? No, I'm sticking with more strictly with the original definitions. You're absolutely wrong about that.
Okay, after the Philistines had captured the Ark of God, they took it to Ebenezer to Ashdod, carried it into the temple.
I'll tell you two things right now. You reading this is a modern translation. They greatly changed some of the words to suit their belief system, including the word temple. It does not say temple.
Okay.
The original word is not temple. The original word is house. Okay. They changed it to mean temple, and that's not the only example from within what you just read. So it's okay to read a modern translation, but then to say that those definitions I'm using out of order when in fact your translation is using out of order is just inaccurate.
I think that's a dodge that a lot of Christian apologists use that I think is
no. I will look up the actual words for you if you so desire.
So a prophecy that is useful, a prophecy that I think you can call a prophecy, is one that is communicated and communicated well and is specific.
Sure.
I don't think that would be communicated well at all. Because if that were the case, it would just read that way, right? The Philistines were an actual people. It is a people group.
Yes, they were.
Right? You have it bunkered on either side with stories of conquest, right? Those are stories that you have a culture telling themselves about, right? If you have a culture that has committed genocide, then I think it's important that the story that they tell themselves justifies the genocide that they committed. Which is a thing.
Yeah, boy. They use it for that a lot. You're right.
And I think that what you have here is a story. Mm-hmm. And that story describes something very specific that has absolutely nothing to do with the prophecy that you're describing. I don't think that isn't a prophecy, because if it was, it would say the constellation that is currently known as, or will be known as, Dagon. You
haven't run through the logic of this, Eric.
I don't think there's logic to be had in this.
Hold on, just slow down a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I'm glad you're passionate about your position. I am too. But okay. So let's say it was written the way you were just describing, just blah 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 blah, and that's how it is.
Sure.
Okay. And let's say that it was that obvious.
Okay.
Well, the first problem with that is it wouldn't be a prophecy by defined within within its own text. First of all, okay,
and that's not a problem.
Hold on.
Okay.
The second problem with that is it would defeat other parts of the text, which says that certain things are hidden away and saved for a certain time within the text. Okay, so if all of it was like that. Well, you just made it self-defeating. Okay, so that I think should be a problem. The third thing is that if we knew, let's say just for an experiment, for a mental experiment, let's say we all knew God was a fact, and we all knew heaven was a fact, and we all knew all of our ancestry was a fact. Mm-hmm. What are we doing here? Waiting? What good would that do anybody? And I like David Silverman presented this argument. If God had us in heaven perfect, why didn't he just keep us there? Why go through this entire exercise? Him and Frank Turek, great show on Silverman's part, terrible on Frank Turek's part. But he's right. That wouldn't serve any purpose. We wouldn't gain anything. We'd just be stuck here waiting.
And what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with stuck here waiting when the fact is that we could be somewhere else and be well-adjusted and happy, and there'd be no more death, disease, rape, cancer, etc.? That's like saying, That's like saying, oh, I think I do prefer to chop my own head off.
Okay, so let me break this down just a little bit, because these things are very, very disparate that you're trying to bring together, and I'm trying to follow the thread, but it's becoming increasingly nebulous. So the example you gave is,
you asked me why it's cryptic.
Yeah, if the Bible were true,
yes. Right,
and we understood everything, then
sure,
there's no point to that. Therefore, this is cryptic. Is that your?
No, there's no point to us being here, and that's why it's cryptic, so we can have an honest experience here.
Okay, can you have an honest experience without it being cryptic?
No, you couldn't.
Okay. If I were to burn every Bible on the planet, would we no longer be able to have honest experiences?
Not about that particular thing that it's talking about. No, you couldn't.
Okay, so does that mean that your observation of the constellation would not come true? Would not happen?
It would still happen. It's just it wouldn't serve any purpose, because it wouldn't be a testimony to us, because we wouldn't know about it.
Okay, so
it would not be prophecy. It would be just something that happened that was really, really unusual and probably never happened twice.
Yeah, I think that happens every day. I don't think that's evidence of something deeper or greater.
No, you don't.
Really? What are the odds that you're here out of all the other sperm? Right? What are the odds?
No, that's conflating. That's a fallacy too. You were going to be something. If your mom was going to get pregnant, you're going to be one of those sperm. That's like saying, oh, I had to be that sperm to be me. That's ridiculous.
So I'm glad you are most of the way there. I think that unlikely things does not make other unlikely things true.
Right. So how do we know if something is just unlikely or prophecy?
Right. Well, first,
that's a good question.
First, you have to see the prophecy, right? What you've done is reread a work of fiction to now describe something that is true about the universe that we're in.
No.
So
no, that's a straw man. I did no such thing.
Okay. So why do we need to redefine the Ark of the Covenant as heaven?
No, I don't need to redefine, nor did I try to redefine, nor was I looking to redefine, nor did I know how to redefine.
I really...
That's just all... It's all incorrect. I know it can look that way.
Okay, so when it says
because the things I'm saying work well and definitionally and in the actual original words, it looks like I did that research, and people accuse me of that all the time. That's just not true.
You did what research?
I just used the reading frame, and it turns out that story. And then if I go and look up all the definitions within the story, they work in that reading frame. It's not the other way around.
You made a jump here.
Okay.
And the jump is that you needed to be educated in a certain way in order to be. How do you know that you're not coincidentally right?
How do I know that I'm not coincidentally right?
Yeah.
Consistency, applicability, evidence where expected.
Okay.
No evidence where not expected. So, just like the whole forensic thing.
I'm glad,
like that.
I'm glad you bring up consistency.
Sure.
So help me. What is another example of a prophecy that has come true that is consistent with the way that you read this story out of Torah?
Did I forget to mention it's the first prophecy mentioned and the only one that hasn't even happened but is bound to happen in the near future? Yeah, did I mention that?
No, because that's not true. There are lots of prophecies in the Bible. There are prophecies that are made throughout the Bible.
Yes, but none of them have happened. But are you saying that there are prophecies within the text that have happened?
So as described. So let's say
as described by who?
Exactly. So let's say that we encounter, I don't know, a pandemic.
Okay.
And then after the fact, you write down, at some point in the future, there will be a pandemic.
Right.
Right? That prophecy can only be a prophecy if the people after the fact have no idea when you wrote it. Right? It's a justification
No. That's how a person could write something that appears to be prophecy.
That you're absolutely right.
That would not make it prophecy.
Exactly. I think that the prophecies that are described in the Bible of things that have come true all fall into that category.
Yeah. Well, you are at least agnostic, aren't you? What would I expect you to think?
So I don't know how that answers the point that I'm making, but that's fine. What I'm saying is,
I would expect you to say that. That's consistent with your view of how things and what reality is. I'm glad you expressed it.
And what I'm asking you to do is to show me why I'm wrong, or show me why it is more likely the case that you're correct about the thing that you're saying than I am correct about the explanation that I have for the thing. Right?
Okay. How many directions are there in outer space? From all perspectives.
What does that have to do with the Ark of the Covenant?
I'm showing you. You asked me to show you something. I'm showing you.
Okay. When you're talking about directions, you're talking about definitions that
from all perspectives. From all perspectives in outer space, how many perceivable directions could there be in all of outer space?
0.
There are 0 perceivable directions in outer space.
Yes.
I don't understand why you say that.
Because directions are a thing that we apply, right? If you want to create the idea of directions, what you need to do is you need to ground yourself. You need to stop and go, okay, you know what? I'm going to take this point in space and I'm going to create reference points. And using those reference points,
right? I gave you a reference point
around.
I gave you a reference point. I said from every reference point in outer space, I used the word perspective.
Right. That makes
I gave you every reference point.
That makes it meaningless.
I gave you no, it's not meaningless. Those are definitionally sound ways to use those words. It's not meaningless. I said from every perceivable, every possible reference point or perspective. I use the word perspective. How many directions are there in outer space? And you have to take each of those different positions and add up all those different directions.
An undetermined amount.
Okay, but a large number.
Okay.
All right. So compared to that very large number, and that would be what we would call a very large number, I am talking about one specific azimuth. That is a directional path, okay, from A toward B. So that's literally an infinite in one or close to it.
Okay.
So it's literally a chance of an infinite in one. So I've got one infinite to one in my story.
Okay.
All right. Now, of all the constellations and of all the triplets of stars that do exist in constellations, everything that forms a triangle.
Got it.
How many of those do you suppose there are?
So,
because I'm only talking about one triangle.
Right.
I'm not talking about all of them.
You're appealing to the unlikeliness.
Yes, right now.
Of that, right. I'm
right.
saying that you found something that is going to happen. Right, a prediction that I'm assuming.
No, you are right now lying about me. Technically, you're not doing it on purpose, but you're right now lying about me.
Okay,
you've already suggested this. I've already said it didn't happen that way. You are reassuming that that's the way it happened, and you're just not correct.
So I want to remove you from the equation and find out if there's any use to the things that are coming out of this conversation. I want to remove you entirely.
Okay.
Why do I think that this story is talking about a constellation?
Is there a constellation?
Don't care. It could have been named that afterward. It could have been named that by someone at some point in time that looked at that story and decided that they were going to do it. And you know what? Actually, that's consistent with the way that we understand constellations. People name them after their deities. They name them after stories that are going around in myth because that's what they are associating. That is has nothing to do with the story itself. Do I have any reason to believe that constellation existed before the story that they named it after? No, that's silly. I think the story existed long before someone named the constellation after it.
That's fair. That's fair. No. But for that to be a good, strong point, you'd have to say that like IKEA became Libra and Scorpio, that we sectionalized it or changed it in some way, and that's just not true. The head and hands of Dagon, Poseidon, and Draco have always been the head and hands. So we still are talking about three particular stars.
I don't care.
No matter what name we use.
I don't care. Why are we deciding that this story is talking about a constellation?
Because the overall reading frame says that it's talking about constellations.
Right.
Or in that particular case anyway.
That is
there's other constellations mentioned throughout. Hold on a second. I'm trying to answer. And that definitionally in the original definitions it works. And that it makes a context that does not conflict with reality or history.
Okay.
Which things I think we've disproven.
Right. You gave me a tautology. I don't care.
I don't understand why that's a tautology.
Because if it's true, then it's true. Cool. I don't care.
No, that's not what I said. No, I'm saying it's true because first of all, it's plausible.
So
second of all, it doesn't conflict with our understanding of reality. Third of all, it's consistent. Fourth of all, it has evidence where evidence should be expected. Fifth, the likelihood of those things actually happening is almost zero.
The likelihood of anything,
on like that. Yeah, it's not a tautology. That's how we measure things.
No,
that we can't physically see in front of us.
When I asked you, is it how did we determine that they were talking about a constellation instead of the story that's described? You said, well, according to this view, X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that is a tautology. According to X, Y, and Z, then X, Y, and Z. According to your view, X, Y, and Z. I understand. You already said that. And I
thought a tautology was something that was meaningless based in circular reasoning. Is that a bad definition?
No, that's a perfect
it's an okay definition?
Yes. What you responded with was circular reasoning.
Okay, show me where it's circular.
Okay. You began that with according to this viewpoint. That's the case.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
How is that different from if I'm right, then I'm right?
Okay. I think that's a good point. Okay. So how do we know that we contextually understand anything?
Gotcha. That's perfect. So contextual understanding has a whole lot to do with, well, hold on. Let me back up a little bit. We both are agreeing that we live in the same universe. Do we have absolute knowledge of that to be the case? No, we could both be brains in vats. We could both be in the Matrix. That's understandable.
Sure, but then there's no point in talking.
Exactly. We're just moving on as if that's not the case, right? It's
right. Let's just move on as if.
Yeah, we're moving on. We're understanding things about the world. I can hold up a chair. I could say this is a chair. I don't need to be in the room to tell you that it's a chair. I can put you in a room with that same chair, and you could go, "Hey, that is a chair." Right? We're using these words because we're agreeing on their definitions.
Sure.
So when you're talking about understanding things in context, we're using those words as we're defining them to tell stories or to describe things about the world. That's how that works.
Sure.
If you are not doing that, then you are not effectively communicating, which I think applies to this. And I think that it breaks down from there. I think that the odds of whether or not something is likely has nothing to do with whether or not something unrelated is true.
Okay.
Right? I think that this prophecy is unrelated to the thing that you're describing, because I think the prophecy has been blended to fit what you have found. And I don't think that that's how the world works.
Well, now you're calling me a liar. I don't think I really appreciate that.
I don't think that you're doing it on purpose.
I mean, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying you honestly hold your position.
Sure, absolutely. I don't think that. Do you think that I'm calling you dishonest? Because I think lying means dishonesty.
No, I think you're calling me a liar.
So
I've said twice. I'll say a third time. I did not find the scientific information and relate it to the story. I did not. It's not true.
Okay, so you
now I've stated that 4 times, and I'm going to hold to that because I believe that's true. In my memory, I saw the story. I read the story within the context. It made predictions about things I didn't know about. In fact, and one that particular case, NASA didn't know about. And then I went and looked for it, and I couldn't even find it for 4 years till NASA found it. So no, I did not match the story to science. I did not do that. It's not true. Now, your understanding of spiritual text and your belief system about what reality is, I'm sure is very different from mine, and that's okay. But to say that I'm being dishonest,
I don't think you're being dishonest.
I just don't think that's fair.
I don't think you're being dishonest.
I'm not being dishonest with you.
I don't think
I'm
you're
just
being
not doing that.
dishonest. I don't think you're being dishonest. Richard.
Well, the things you've said have required that I went and found the science and matched it to the text, and that's just simply not true. And since NASA didn't know, certainly you don't think I knew that there was going to be a comet coming that way, and I wanted the Bible to be true so badly that although I knew it, which I couldn't have known, that I matched it to the story, which thing I'd never read, using a context that I'd only had for less than a year. Certainly you can't think that's true.
Well,
in which case, but it always comes down to this. Either this is the right way to read it or Richard's a liar. And that's what it really boils down to.
No, that's not the case.
Well, it will be. It often is.
No,
it often is.
No, I think that the world is full of people who honestly believe things that are not true. It doesn't make them liars. It just makes them honestly believing things that are not true. You have people who I can bring up cult followers, right? People who say that they honestly think that they saw that their cult leader, did miracles, right? There are tons and tons of examples of that.
Penn and Teller do miracles.
So if I were to pull one of those believers who said, I saw a miracle, do I think that they're a liar? No. And I think they're wrong. Do I think that it's making a judgment about their character? No. No,
you just think they're inaccurate. Yeah.
Right. I'm not calling you a liar. I think that you're holding to something and that the reasoning is shoddy.
Okay.
How many of these prophecies do you So let's say that was not the case. Let's say that you looked up Dagon, you went, hey, that's a constellation. If this reading, I want to meet you where you're at. If this reading means this context, then I will find this kind of thing. And you look it up, and that turns out to be the case. You go, okay, this looks like a prophecy.
Which surprised me, actually.
If you were to look it up and that were not the case, then would you say maybe the way I'm looking into things isn't right, or
it'd have to be wrong.
That this was a negative, right? Were you counting the hits and ignoring the misses?
Well, certainly it would be a negative. Certainly, then I read it wrong.
Okay.
Obviously,
it sounds like you have everything.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, it sounds like you have everything to gain from the possibility of coming across one that matches.
No, I'm not Finkelstein. I'm not. I have nothing to gain. I'm not trying to prove something. I've never been a religious guy. I got away from structured religion when I was a kid because I was nearly raped. I mean, I had every reason to not think any of this is true, and I held that for 30 years.
So,
and besides that, it's embarrassing.
I don't think the thing you have to gain is a religious belief, Richard. What we have is we have our inner maps of the way we think that the universe works. And I think that what you've given me is an example of the way that you're mapping your understanding to the world, to the world that you're observing. I don't think that that means that you're looking to be religious. I think that you're looking to have an inner map of the world that correlates to the world that you're in. I'm doing the same thing. Because I
already had one that worked just fine for me, that I enjoyed and I appreciated and other people liked. I'm less liked now.
And you and I both agree that
I'm having less fun now. I have less money now. I have less girlfriends now. I have less nice things now. Please tell me about this benefit.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. That is a rawness that it says a whole lot about you as a person. I appreciate it.
I would go back if I could, I just can't honestly go back to what I thought was true then.
Sure.
I liked rum and coke. I like females. I like bar hopping. I like fast motorcycles. I mean...
And all of those things you can still participate in, right?
Not anymore, no.
You can't participate in relationships with people?
What's that?
You can't participate in intimate relationships?
No, absolutely not. I think it would be a lie.
Why?
Because I would be making a promise that I can't keep. That's a lie.
What's the promise?
The promise is to be stable and steady and in one place and provide maybe something in the way of either emotional support, physical security, or financial support, which I can't do.
That is not necessarily what people are always looking for.
They're the basics, I think.
I think that in the experience that I've had, what that's doing is that's defining relationships in a way that cuts out a lot of existing relationships. There are a lot of relationships that exist there where there aren't those expectations.
You mean like platonic relationships? I have those. I enjoy those.
No, I'm talking about fuck buddies.
Oh, there's no way I would do that.
Why not?
I would consider it immoral for me. Not immoral on the whole, but immoral for me.
Okay. So your belief system has cut out your ability to have relationships because your belief system now has you at a place where you don't feel like you're able to be stable.
Only romantic and sexual relationships have been eliminated.
Okay,
I have a lot of relationships otherwise.
Okay, what about your belief system impacts that? What I'm wondering is, like, do you think that...
I'll try to answer anything, but I'm not sure I understood the question.
Sure, no problem. Do you think that there's a dictate from above that is... you're abiding by, that's saying that, or are you just appealing to the fact that, this is kind of where you're at in your life? Like, I'll tell you right now that...
Well, that's a good point, too. I am 52 years old. Past my prime.
I don't care. So I've had to end relationships because I wasn't in a place where I could be in the relationship that I wanted to have. That had nothing to do with my beliefs. Your response to, what you've lost because of your beliefs, one of those was relationships. And so that confused me. Because you're saying, because of the beliefs that you had, you've, suffered a lot of these losses, right? You've suffered the loss.
Oh no, I gave them up I gave them up willingly, was happy to get rid of them.
Okay. And so what I'm trying to determine is, am I poking way too much into Richard's personal life, or...
No, you're fine. I don't care.
Well, or is this related to his theistic belief? So I'm trying to determine whether or not you bringing up relationships and has anything to do with what you believe, and does that impact whether or not it's true?
I was only trying to say that it severely changed my point of view. I'm not ashamed of the details of it or what I was like or what I enjoyed or what I do or don't do now. That's all fine. Kind of not my point. But I was extremely normal, if you'll accept that, very average kind of a person, you know?
I personally think that normal is way overrated. And honestly, I think that normal is...
I'm using it colloquially, but...
I know, but dude, I think that suffering losses does not provide evidence to...
It's not what happened. That's in the wrong order.
Okay, right.
My change in understanding of reality caused me to become a more morally strict person. I could not keep lying to people, and I stopped. And because I stopped lying to people, I couldn't maintain things built on lies.
Okay.
That's all.
Richard, I want to hug you.
Oh, bro, I'd give you a hug too if I could reach that far.
I want to hug you. I think that outside of religious debates and philosophy and theology, I hope you get everything out of the world that you could possibly want. Moving back to the theology, we got caught on one very specific thing, and that specific thing was prophecy. And I think that we went off on a huge quest about prophecy. And there are a lot of things that I missed, because if you're talking about a theology, I'm assuming there's a lot more than prophecy in it. So suffice it to say that I don't think that there's enough evidence to justify the prophecy example that you gave. What else is there other than prophecy? Because that one I'm not convinced by.
Well, there's always the appeal to personal revelation, right?
Yeah.
But seriously, I meant that as a joke.
I got it. That's why I laughed.
There have been physical things that have happened within my discernible, provable existence, which I could not have done. No person could have done, as far as I know. That happened anyway, and I would give you an example. My military record says that I'm flat-footed.
Okay.
Little kids' footy prints around the pool tells me I was flat-footed. Needing arch supports my whole adult life tells me I was flat-footed. So because of those things, I think that I'm supposed to be flat-footed right this moment. I know of no medical precedent or acupuncture or exercises or anything that a person could do to become not flat-footed. I don't know of such a thing. If you do, I'd hear of it.
What do you mean by supposed to be flat-footed right now?
I mean, I was born to be a flat-footed person. I believe genetically I'm flat-footed. I believe that flat-footed, I've been flat-footed my whole life and have plenty of evidence to it.
Sure.
So I should be flat-footed right now, being, 50 plus.
Yeah.
And not knowing a way to correct flat-footedness. I mean, if you know a way, I would hear of it.
I would love to as well. I'm flat-footed.
Okay.
That said, I help me here, because I don't know where you're going with this.
Oh, that's okay. So I was so flat-footed that if I stepped on something more than, say, a half-inch tall, and I mean wearing shoes, not even being barefoot, but wearing standard, fairly hard bottom shoes or exercise shoes. If with the ball of my left foot, I stepped on something about a half-inch tall that was less than 2 inches across, all right? Where my ring finger on my left foot, that toe, my ring toe, I guess, where that if I stepped on an object that tall and that narrow, about a half inch by about a half inch, I would have a bone pop out the bottom of my left foot. Now, that happened my entire adult life until last year, when that bone quit popping out of the bottom of my left foot. And I didn't really notice it because it didn't happen all the time anyway. And I would just step on something a little bit bigger and sharper than that and shove the bone back in. I was kind of used to it, you know? So I didn't think anything about it. I just thought I had been careful not to step on something pointy for quite some time with the ball of my foot, so the bone hadn't popped out in a while.
Okay.
But I have very, very warm feet. In fact, I can barely wear most shoes. Okay. And I enjoy standing on cold concrete in the wintertime sometimes.
Okay.
My feet are just way hot.
Okay.
So I went outside and I had a cigarette and there was nobody around, and I took my shoes off and I stood on some nice cold concrete, and I was standing there enjoying a cigarette in the cold concrete because it feels so refreshing. And I realized, and this was about, I'd say 5 or 6 months ago, I realized that the middle of my foot wasn't cold. I went, wait a minute, the middle of my foot's not cold. And when I realized that, it shocked me, and I looked down and I yanked my foot up to see what was wrong, and I had a classic human being footprint impression.
You got an arch.
There's an arch.
Okay.
Now, I can show you medical records where I don't have an arch, and I can show you my feet, which do.
Okay.
But I know of nothing. I didn't do anything different. I don't know of something you could do that's different. I don't know of a medical precedent. I don't know of surgery.
Sure. I think that unexplained things medically happen all the time. I absolutely.
I want a precedent for arches fixing themselves. That's what I'm asking for.
Sure. I also want a precedent for spontaneous remission of cancer.
Oh, there's plenty of cases of that.
And there are plenty of cases of amazing things happening. I'm saying that this is an amazing thing that you're describing that we don't have an explanation.
No, I want a precedent for that thing.
What would that do?
What would that do? That would show me it is possible that it fixed because my body got healthier for some reason, or I smoked through all those years. I still smoke. I don't exercise really. I think I eat mostly junk food. I do. I love junk food.
What I'm saying is the response to that is something amazing happened, and I don't know how it happened. I don't know how that relates back to your theistic beliefs.
How many of those would you want if you were me?
How many of what?
Before you just started to say, wait a minute, it can't be all of those. No precedent for. I mean, it goes way beyond the likelihood that what I'm describing is my personal biases and preferences.
Well,
it just goes way beyond that in my view. Now, am I biased? Of course I'm biased.
Yeah, you're human.
And I'm doing the best that I can to be honest about that and be honest with myself. But even in those efforts, there are things that have happened that I've seen happen that I can't justify by my bias.
So,
like, even looking at it like, oh, I'm super, super biased. Does that make it work? No, I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Do you think that after you've come across this belief system, that is the cause, or that may likely be the cause of what happened to your foot? Do you think if you did?
Okay, that's what you mean by cause.
Sure. If you didn't believe this, do you think that your foot would have done what it did?
If I didn't believe this,
right?
I think my foot would have done what it did.
Yeah.
Well, let's be inclusive. Both feet.
Both feet.
But
okay. I'm jealous, by the way.
Both feet simultaneously.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's a lot easier to walk now, and my bone don't stick out the bottom of my foot ever.
Screw you, man. I'm like Donald Duck. I just flop around. Anyway.
Yeah, I know. Man, I've been there. I know how that is. Well, that sucks.
It does, and I can't stand for very long. That said,
You can't stand for very long.
Yeah.
It hurts your back.
Right.
It displaces your knee alignment. If you walk on rough terrain, it's extremely uncomfortable. I mean, I get it.
I'm right there with you.
Okay.
Would me believing what you believe potentially fix my foot?
Yeah, I guess so. If that was the intent of God, was to impress you by fixing your foot, then yes.
Well, okay. So you directly.
But it would just be to impress you. I mean, anyone else can always find a way around it. And all of the things I'm saying, anyone else can always find a way around it.
Well, the thing is like, if I were to ask you at the outset, hey, Richard, is this description of, this personal kind of miracle type situation, would it convince me? You would say no. I'd say, okay, why has it convinced you?
If you'd seen everything I've seen, I do believe it would convince you as well. I think I'm actually a pretty harsh critic. I think that my parents were teachers and serious. I think my next eldest brother started teaching me logic when I was 4, although I don't remember any terms. I think I have a pretty good grip on most of the idea of it. I think that I made fun of my teachers to entertain myself. I think that I found a way at 13 to do literally less than 1/4 of the necessary work and still pass because I wanted to flip them off. And I found a way to do it and get away with it.
Are you giving me examples of you being a smart guy?
And a jerk and stubborn and but critical. I mean, I've always been. I think I'm right now hypercritical. Like Eric, to be honest with you, when I hear me saying these things, they sound nuts. They sound absolutely insane. But I can't deny that this is what I believe reality is. This sounds like the dumbest crap ever.
And you honestly believe it?
I don't have a choice. I think it's real.
I think that
I can't find a way around it. That's for sure.
Well, I think that you hit upon something that is very, very solid that I do talk about a lot. What you hit upon is I don't think that you have a choice in what you believe. I think that your beliefs are the things that you understand to be true about the world that you're in. And you come to those.
As far as I can tell.
Right. You come to that understanding because of your epistemology, the toolbox that you use to decipher the world around you, right? When you come up across new information, you reach into that toolbox, you pull out the most relevant tool that you think you have, and you apply that tool, right? And
hope so.
I think that we're all trying to make sure that we have the best tools available. And based on what we understand, how we applied those tools, that's how we come to our understanding. That's how we come to what we believe about the world. So I think that you have an understanding of something and you used a tool that I don't have. Now the question is that tool useful? Is it something that I should have? Is that something that you should have? And
well, I'm not sure I should have it.
The proper language for that is epistemic justification. Right.
Right.
So what is your epistemic justification? And when we've brought it up, I don't think you're a liar. I think you honestly believe this. I think if you did not honestly believe this, I would not see value in this conversation because you would be a dishonest actor. I think you honestly believe this.
Yeah.
That said,
I do honestly believe it.
I believe you.
Yeah.
That said, when I come across things that I don't understand, I flag them in my brain. I say, that's a thing that I don't understand. And that goes into the massive pile of things that I don't understand. And I want to.
We've all got one, man.
Absolutely. Actually, I think we don't understand most things about the universe. That, we're only scratching the surface, man. That said, I try not to ascribe extra things until I have evidence, right? If I take a class that teaches me mathematics and hey, you know what, this formula actually helps me make better sense of the world around me, then I'm able to reach in and grab it and go from there.
Sure. It's useful.
Absolutely. I see these pieces of this example that you gave me, and I see it being useful. I just don't see it mapping to reality. I think we have a false positive, right? I think that
I think you have one example.
Right, but I also have many examples of tons of unlikely things. And what that means is that there are tons of unlikely things that happen. I want to make sure that when I do ascribe my understanding, right, when I do go, okay, you know what, I have a little bit more understanding about the world, and now I'm going to apply things and hopefully learn more about those things that I don't understand, right? I want to make sure that I'm doing that at the right time. I want to make sure that I'm using the right tools. And I think what you gave me is something that is a false positive. And
well, of course you think that.
Well, and I'll tell you why I think it's a false positive. Because the reasoning therein is it's an appeal to consequence, right? When you appeal to consequence, you're not necessarily making a truth claim. You're just appealing. Like, I'll give you an example. It's a really bad one.
But I think I need one.
Sure. So there, let me try and get there. Holocaust denial, right? The Holocaust can't be true because if it was true, that would be really bad. And
I'm sorry. And I don't want to accept that people could do something that bad.
Well, not even that I don't want to accept it. It's just that the consequent of it being really bad has no bearing on whether or not it's true, right?
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I get it.
And so the way I'm applying this is the consequent of, you going through those steps, I don't think has anything to do with the truth value of the way you got there. I think you backed your way in, right? Because you've said,
What do you mean by backed your way in? What's that mean?
Sure. So in the same way, hey, when you said, hey, Eric, I went about it in this way, right? I read with this lens and I applied that lens. And then I went to see if there was evidence to back it up, right? And
well, just see if it was even plausible. Never mind. Hardcore evidence I think is rare.
Well, I don't.
Found some, in my opinion. I found some, but I was just trying to see if it was even possible or plausible, even at all.
Well,
I didn't think it was.
The thing is there's hard evidence for most things, right?
Really?
Absolutely.
I thought 75% of the existence is dark matter, which we have no evidence for, only necessity.
Right.
Okay, so technically, most things there is no evidence for.
Let me.
I'm just kidding, man.
Let me rephrase.
I'm just joking.
Let me rephrase. No, that's a good point. I said something very nebulous, and I should rephrase that. When we're talking about things in the world that we apply definitions to and meanings to, and that we're referencing, right, like the chair, right?
Yeah.
You can look for evidence of whether or not that chair is there. And in this world that we're in, as we're describing things, as we're labeling things and moving through and using language to communicate with each other about those things, the time to accept a thing, the time to believe it, and the time to move forward on that epistemic justification is when there's evidence for it. I think that the evidence that you gave was an appeal to consequence. And basically what that means is that just because I think they're unrelated, is what I'm trying to say. I think they're unrelated.
I'm trying to understand this. Doesn't an appeal to consequence on my part indicate that I had some desire?
Not necessarily. No.
Why would you deny the obvious without a desire?
Why would you deny the obvious without a desire?
Like, why would I reject scholarship and historical context of it without a desire? Why would I even do that?
Well, I think that goes back to belief. I think you're using the best tools that you have available. I don't think it's about a motivated thinking, and I don't think it's a motivated belief. I think it's applying the best tools you have available to understanding the world around you. I don't think desire comes into it. I don't think I could ever desire myself into believing something, and I don't think you could ever desire yourself.
Then I think I'm a fool.
How so?
I mean, if you're right, I'm a fool, because it would have been a lot easier to accept what everyone else was already saying if I wanted to just accept it.
I'm not saying you wanted to.
Well, if I didn't want to accept it,
I think you're.
I mean, I'm spitballing here. I'm trying to figure out what you're saying.
Sure.
I don't think I understand.
No worries. I think your wants have nothing to do with it. I think that you are subject to your understanding about the world around you, right? The toolbox that you are using has nothing to do with your motivations. It has nothing to do with your wants. It has everything to do with the way you understand the universe.
I think I get it. So I am using what I believe to be objective, and although it's not necessarily objective. So it's not my opinion nor my desires that adding into it, but by default, for whatever reasons, I think that those things have the greatest value, so I've accepted them as true, even from outside of myself, which does not necessarily make them true. Is that accurate?
Almost, because I don't think that they have the greatest value either. It's just how you understand a thing to be true, right? I think that there's
no, I didn't say they do have the highest value.
Oh,
I said that myself perceptually right now, I think they have the highest value.
Well, I think that if you did not, if you looked at this and you went, like I do, you know what? That doesn't really seem to be like a thing. I don't think you'd be having this conversation with me. If you didn't believe it, we wouldn't have this conversation. You do believe
it. I still want to be honest about it. I mean, I'm trying to sort out the logical fallacy that I think you're trying to point out to me.
Sure. The way I'm sorting it out is the reasoning that you gave. And the reasoning that you gave is not a tool that I can use to come to that conclusion. The tool that you gave me was one that I can use to determine whether or not you are an honest actor.
Okay.
Right? The examples that you gave had everything to do with Richard. It has nothing to do with the claim that Richard made.
Until it happens.
Well, actually, I don't think I think they're in completely separate spheres. Because I think that when a thing happens, it happens regardless of you, unless we're talking about you, right? If you're talking about
not really talking about me as much as I'm trying to talk about the prophecy. I'm not talking about me and what I think or feel about the prophecy.
Right.
That's irrelevant.
And the reasoning that you gave has everything to do with you.
Man, this is a really good time. Thanks.
No worries. But do you see why it has everything to do with you?
I wasn't trying to derail. It's just I felt compelled.
No, I appreciate that. I'm enjoying it as well. The reasoning that you gave has to do with Richard. It doesn't have to do with the prophecy.
Well, that's all I got. I mean, okay, let's say, for instance, that all of the prophecy were accurate and the context that I've adopted applicably works, and it's all one prophecy around the whole planet, which is what I believe is true. So if we can grant that for the sake of argument for just a moment, I can present to you zero evidence. Why? It's prophetic. So what do I have left?
What you have?
What do I have left? I have my personal experience and things that I can only justify about my own personal experience from appealing to an intellect outside of myself.
Right.
It's the only way I can justify them. So because it's the only way that I can find to justify them, I think that's the case.
I think that what you just said maybe doesn't completely map to what you were telling me earlier.
Okay.
And I don't think that was intentional, but I do want to be charitable here, right? So what you just said was the only way that I could understand that there's, this mind, this greater mind, right, or this God belief is through this context, and so I have to use this context to justify it. And I don't think that's what you were saying earlier, and I think that repeated back, you're shaking your head no. So okay, so
no, it's not what I said. I said exactly the opposite of that.
Okay, could you repeat it?
What I said was, that's what happens. What I said is, I have been having these really weird experiences that I didn't expect to have. So let's start there.
Okay.
Okay. And if they involve these experiences, information which is outside of the possibility of my knowledge, then I don't have the ability to remember it or hypothesize it, fabricate it, extrapolate it. If it's just completely outside of my experience, but that does not mean it's outside of everyone's experience. It doesn't mean that.
Sure.
So if it's just told to me by somebody else, but they've had the experience, and then I go and see if what they told me is true, then I think an intelligent thing had an experience and told me about it. Then I go to see if it's plausible, and I find it is. Well, then I think they weren't lying.
See, here's the thing: is the lying part, right? I think you can have an experience that's not real.
Oh, we can always say that.
Absolutely, and I can give you examples because before I wound up where I'm at, I did shamanistic drugs trying to find the different deities, right? I was trying to find the collective unconscious. I was trying to find, these different shamanistic religions. And so I did some really mind-altering drugs, and I had experiences, and my retelling of that experience does not map to reality. It still makes it an experience, and me telling you about my experience, I'm not being dishonest. That also doesn't mean that what I'm describing maps to reality. Sure,
it doesn't.
Right. And
which is exactly not what I just said.
So you know what I need to do, Richard?
What?
I need to go back and I need to watch this. I need to take time and I need to rewind it, and I need to listen to you. I think that the response of "you're calling me a liar," I think that's something that I viscerally have a very, very visceral reaction to, because
it's a serious thing, and I didn't say it lightly.
I understand that.
I don't want to hurt you.
The thing is who cares if I'm hurt? I don't care.
I do.
Don't.
But I do.
I'll get over it.
Too bad. I don't care.
I'll get over it. Because I'd much rather get to the meat of things. And if I can't stand
the thought of you, I can't stand the thought of you feeling that way about me.
That's okay.
I can't stand the thought of hurting someone, actually.
We do it all the time. Trust me. Do you know how many hate letters I get?
I'll fix it whenever I can, though. So I think I should.
I think that's very sweet of you. I think you're a really sweet guy.
So I don't take it lightly, and I'm not. I was careful when I said it. I don't think, since I'd already said 3 times the order in which it happened, then I think what's going on there is not purposeful, but by definition saying that I must be lying when I know that I'm not lying. Not that you're trying to accuse me of being a liar, but by default saying I'm lying. I'm not. This has been my experience. I didn't state it out of order. I never have. I never could. I never would, because I'm not trying to be defensive and I'm not trying to be deceitful.
Right.
And because I actually believe in these things, I'm never insulted. I'm never defensive, really. I can get frustrated with people, but that's not defensive.
Sure.
I know I wasn't lying, and I know that I did not see evidence in reality and then back up into it to apply it to things that I found in the Bible in order to make it seem like the Bible was plausible. But it did happen in exactly the opposite order of that. Now, of course, I can always say that I could have learned something and I couldn't remember that I learned it. For instance, I don't remember learning how to tie my shoes, but I tie my shoes.
Sure.
Right? So I can still apply it in everyday life. I don't remember Mom teaching me how to wipe my bum, but apparently she did.
Right.
I didn't invent that. So it could be that I can always say I don't remember learning it, but must have learned it somehow. But in order for that to be true, then the knowledge would have to exist on the earth somewhere.
Where I'm going with it is that how did we get from determining, hey, this is a really amazing coincidence, to this maps to reality? And when looking at it, I think that if it mapped to reality as a prophecy, that it would say this is a prophecy. And here's the prophecy.
It does. And it does.
Where in the Bible does it say that this story is a prophecy?
Within that very story itself.
Okay, where? I've got it up right here.
Well, if you're expecting it to say Dagon is a constellation, you're going to be disappointed as well. But within the context of the reading frame that I'm describing, it does describe it is a prophecy. It hasn't happened.
Right. And
it's the first sign of God's coming.
Right.
So obviously it didn't happen 4,000 years ago if the signs are supposed to be in close proximity within 7 years or so.
Right,
so that by definition that would be a prophecy.
So here's the tool. The tool that I'm isolating is the context and the framework that you're applying to it, the lens that you're looking at this through. That's the tool that's in your hand. That's not Richard.
Right.
That's a tool. Now let's investigate the tool.
Okay.
Can I use this tool and come up with negative, false prophecies? I think I could.
Only if the tool is broken or never existed.
I think that the tool of this framework this lens that you're looking at things through, I want to determine whether or not this lens is useful. And so I want to see if I can apply it, right? The way you scientifically test something is through falsification. So I want to see if this tool, this lens that you're using, is falsifiable. Can I create negatives, right? Can I create a situation where I'm making prophecies that are not true?
I missed a word. I'm making something prophecy, something true?
Yeah. Can I use this lens that you have and make untrue prophecies?
No.
Okay.
That would mean the tool is broken, the lens is broken.
Okay. That is an appeal to consequent. If it didn't work, then it would be broken. Right?
No, that's falsification. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It is falsified.
Well, it's a tautology. If it's broken, then it's broken. I understand that. But Bag just kind of connected to that doesn't mean that it's true. And it doesn't mean that it's working.
You're right. That doesn't make it true.
Right. So how...
It makes it true in one case.
So
what?
Yeah, so I want to take this lens and I want to apply it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So help me define the lens. Can I go back into the Bible and find things that might relate to constellations? And
hold on. I could just define the lens real easy.
Please do.
All religions talking about a powerful first are cryptic, prophetic animism. That they're all using our natural surroundings and even making stuff up where needed to describe in a fairy tale manner things that have not happened here.
So,
but have to happen in physical reality, not on some spiritual plane or something, because that won't help anybody.
No, it wouldn't. Because okay. Thank you for defining the lens. Now, I want to take that lens and I want to use it away from Richard, because I want it to either stand or fall on its own merits, right? And I want to determine whether or not that belongs in Richard's toolkit.
Sure.
Now I think we're on to meat, right? We're talking about the epistemic justification for your belief, and we've said it very, very well. You said it very, very well. Is it cryptic prophetic animism? Are all of these religions cryptic prophetic animism?
Right.
I would pose this to you, Richard. Is it possible that that claim is unfalsifiable?
Is it possible for the claim to be unfalsifiable?
Is it possible that that claim is unfalsifiable? Because in my mind, here's where
it seems clumsy to me. Is it okay if I say instead, are the parts of it that should be falsifiable? Is it okay if I say it that way?
Not quite, and I'll give you an example to help.
Okay.
So what I would worry about is going, hey, I applied this lens, right? I'm using this tool, and I'm saying that, I'm reading a holy book, and I see something that I think can be read cryptically as a prophecy.
Okay.
And so I'm going to apply it. And hey, that turns out not to be true. So does that falsify the tool that you're using, or does that just go, oh, I was wrong about that one?
Well, with one caveat, it would falsify the tool.
Well, if that's the case.
How was it exactly you said that?
Sure. So I'm taking.
You said that a very specific way on purpose.
Right. So I'm looking through holy books, and I'm looking for things that could be cryptically encoded other messages. That's
the part right there. Wrong.
Okay.
Wrong.
How so?
No, that's the wrong idea.
Okay. How did you get to this then?
To make the statement. I know that's weird, right?
Yeah.
To make the. I'm serious. It's super weird. In order to make the statement, I was looking for things that were cryptic.
Yes.
That's inaccurate of the experience.
So, but that would be accurate.
The first thing.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
The absolute first thing I had was the reading frame. Okay. So using the reading frame, it says that all of it's cryptic. I didn't look for cryptic things. Mm-hmm. The reading frame makes it all cryptic prophetic animism. That's what it makes it.
Sure.
Okay.
But now
I don't know if
I'm taking
if
that
we just wasted 3 minutes or what.
No,
I don't know.
No. I'm taking that away from Richard now, and I'm using it.
Okay, fine.
So, according to me using it,
right,
I can find something and go, that looks like a cryptic prophecy that's hidden away in this holy book. Because you could imagine me doing it. You could imagine me picking up a random holy book, and going, you know what, this looks like it could be a cryptic prophecy. And
I think I understand your overall point better now.
Yeah. So I look into it.
Okay, what do? So you just cherry pick the ones you like, and the ones that don't fit aren't valid religions, right? Is that it?
Not that they're not valid religions, but it says more. Okay. But it's describing, hey, that didn't work. But what it's not doing is it's not falsifying the lens. There's no way to say that this is not a good tool.
Okay, find me one that don't work.
Okay, I will.
Find me one who say they are a religion, who have a living God, which this will not work with.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understand the falsification conditions, because I want my viewers to help me. I'm going to look through holy books, and I'm going to find something that I can put together as a cryptic prophecy. And I want that cryptic prophecy to not be true. Because if I could create a cryptic prophecy...
That's skipping a step, and that's like creating your own... that's creating your own positive.
Actually, what it would be doing...
That's creating your own positive.
That would be falsifying the claim. The claim is that these cryptic messages are always true.
No. I said the reading frame always fits the cryptic message.
Sure, but never the other way around, which makes it unfalsifiable.
You can't even say there is falsifiability for prophecy. That's incoherent within itself. It hasn't happened. You can't prove something that hasn't happened.
Which means that you have created a shell that makes it impregnable.
No, that's how you just created your own positive. By definition, you're going to get exactly what you're looking for by the way that you defined it.
Okay.
That's cheating.
How so?
No, it's totally cheating.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead. I'm trying to take that tool and I'm trying to apply it and find out whether or not it's reliable.
No, I don't even know that I've explained what the tool is well enough. I guess I don't know what happened there. I don't know why you would say that as a test. That test makes no sense. You're going to get the answer that you want out of that test.
I want it to be useful. So if it's not useful, I want to throw it out.
I think it's not useful.
Okay.
But let's
dive into the tool again.
Okay.
Because
I'll make a claim.
Sure.
I'll make a claim that the tool should fulfill. How's that?
The thing is, I believe you that in the context you put it together, it will. I want to determine whether or not that tool is always going to work, and if it's useful only in this scenario, which you agree with me is useless, or I can use that tool away from you, and I can get
I think you can easily.
Right, and I can get things that have positive, hey, that's true about the world, and negative, that is absolutely not true about the world from it.
So I know how to do this. I'll just state every religion that I've ever studied.
Well,
in any way. And all a person need to do is go outside of that list, unless I'm a liar, and find an expression that does not work in this context.
Stop saying unless I'm a liar. You are not an expert. No, it wouldn't, because there are so many different ways that people can read their religions. There are so many different contexts that they can have, and they can believe it honestly, and they can think that that's the truth. What you're saying is that somebody else's interpretation of a holy book that you may have read, if it doesn't line up with your understanding of it, then you're a liar? No.
That's not what I said. No. I was saying in order for me to plan this, I would have had to already study it. So I can give you a list of things I have studied, which by default is also a list of things that I haven't, which is a bigger list. All somebody need to do, unless I'm lying about that, I'm lying about what I've studied.
No, I don't think you're lying, but we're talking about Richard again. I'm talking about the tool.
I'm talking about eliminating me.
Okay, so let's eliminate you. Can I come, will that tool reliably let me learn about the universe that I'm in?
You know what? Come to think of it, you're right. We don't even need to go near that far. We can just go to a different biblical story or anything, anywhere. Because I haven't told you I haven't told you what the secret magic lens reveals of all the stories. I haven't told you that.
Well, and here's another question: can I apply that tool to fiction that I know is fiction? Right? Can I apply that tool to a Spider-Man comic book? And
won't get the same answer.
But
you won't get the same answer, and it won't come true.
But I want to see if that tool is falsifiable. And if you can apply it the exact same way and not come to the same answer, then it's not a good tool.
Right. What I'm saying is if you apply it to things it shouldn't be applied to, you should get the wrong answer. So, that's like taking someone's temperature with a knife. It's not going to work out. Okay. It's just the wrong tool for the job.
Okay. So
if you can't get a temperature reading off of a knife, that's correct. You shouldn't.
So if I have somebody who honestly, believes the Star Wars religion.
Sure.
And then apply that tool to the Star Wars universe.
Sure.
Will I come up with the same answers that you came up with?
Well, I have to ask, does the Star Wars religion have a singular progenitor God?
So you have an appeal to the Force. The Force is basically a disembodied mind, unless you follow the prequels, in which case it's
not alive. The Force is not alive in itself.
Actually, the Force is midichlorians, but we're not going to talk about that.
Everyone says that ruined the movie. Everyone says they should have never done that.
Regardless, I can. Could you imagine me coming up with a fictitious religion that, if applying that tool, will not come to reliable results? I'm trying to find different ways to tell you.
Yeah, because your religion would be false because you made it up. It would not work.
Okay, who's to say that this story is not made up?
Well, that's what we're talking about here and how we would test that. That's right.
Right.
That's what we're talking. That's the topic.
Right.
I agree.
I think that if I were to remove you from the picture,
it wouldn't work. And I think you're wrong.
And here's the thing is now I go, okay, here's Richard's conclusion. So if it does not fit Richard's conclusion, then it either is a problem with the book, right? You're applying it to the wrong thing. It's not this religion. Or, some other, but it's never falling on the tool. The tool is unfalsifiable.
So far.
Right.
I'll give you so far. And you're right.
And I think it's a bad tool. I know I've said it different ways.
I have two human beings who've seen enough of the tool to test it on their own without me.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty to say their names at this moment. I'll have to go ask permission.
Doesn't matter. I have listeners who can follow this challenge. And I don't think they're going to have to understand the tool to use it. I'm not certain we've gotten that far into the conversation. If the tool is that there are cryptic prophecies.
Cryptic prophetic animism.
Right. Cryptic prophetic animism found in all religions. That applies.
You can't say all religions. You have to say progenitor living.
Why?
God. Because that's the only kind of God that's described throughout all of these ancient religions. And it's not something like Scientology or something.
Well, actually, if it's a progenitor living God and you're filtering out everything else, then of course that's all that's left. You filtered everything else out.
I'm not cherry picking, which is what that suggests. Okay, but the other ones don't even call themselves religions.
And there are plenty of people
other than some really new age stuff that people came up with purposefully to make fun of people, and I mean, L. Ron Hubbard named the entire principal idea after his wife. It's a bad joke.
Maybe.
That's why it's called Dianetics. That's his wife's first name, Diane.
But when I meet somebody who believes it, I first want to start.
I know it's serious
where
to them.
at.
I'm just saying it's not an accurate way to test the lens.
Well, that's because
it's like a designed false positive, or a designed false negative. Actually,
well, but that's how you determine whether or not a tool is useful. Can I take it from you and come up with anything? Right? It's the same reason why I have issues with people who say that they use exegesis and hermeneutics to understand the Bible, right? If I just find the right language that it was in and apply it, then I can understand it better. No, because if I can apply exegesis and hermeneutics and come up with entirely different storylines.
That's
right?
True. What I'm suggesting is what you're describing is I said Q-tip is a useful tool, and you said yes. Let's see if baseball bats can replace them. That's what I'm hearing you say, and I'm like, you can't qualify a Q-tip using a baseball bat. It's not the same thing. It's not the same measurement at all.
I agree. I want to make sure that we're looking at this tool. Now,
I mean, I think it's broad spread enough to say every religion that I've ever heard of, and all of the ones that I haven't heard of, which claim a singular progenitor God, as in I came from that. All of them. Now, there's a handful that don't claim stuff like that. I'll grant that.
It just feels unfalsifiable.
Definitely a small percentage.
Yeah, it just feels unfalsifiable.
Of course, they better. I mean,
no, because then you treat it like the Matrix and you walk away.
No, it's better for you right now. It better, or you're not reasonable.
How so?
Because everything you're saying, the overview that you've expressed is accurate and logical. And if you had accepted, oh my gosh, I would stop talking to you. If you had accepted what I have presently shown you as convincing arguments that changed your perspective about reality in one conversation, dude, I'd stop talking to you. Because that was not enough to do that.
I think that it was enough to, at least in this conversation, at least in the example that you gave, either it did a really bad job of describing the tool, or that tool's not as reliable as you think. And I'm willing to be charitable and say maybe that didn't do a good job of describing the tool. And I'm okay with that.
Option 3, you have a sample size of almost 0.
Well, that would be not well described tool. Right?
No, we just haven't had enough conversations. Well, everything I've said about that is accurate.
Yeah,
but you have a sample size of 1.5 maybe.
Yeah, and that would be a poorly described tool. It's not. If I need to learn more about it, that means it's not described sufficiently, correct?
That's fair. In the way that you're using described there, okay. Yeah, I can agree with that.
So either it has not been described sufficiently, or it's not a good tool.
See, that's the problem right there. It's sometimes hard to tell in these conversations when a person is being technically accurate and when they're using a colloquial expression.
Sure.
Like there's a big difference between the colloquial use of theory and the scientific use of the word theory. Those are two very different things. You have to know which one.
Absolutely.
So when you said you didn't have enough definition, you were being technically correct, not colloquially acceptable. And I accept that now that I can see that.
Okay. Cool. So I'm trying to be charitable. I'm trying to be charitable, and I'm saying either I don't have enough understanding of it, and you're right, and it just has not been adequately described.
Yeah.
Or it's a bad tool.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I would think that right now, if you'd accepted what you've seen as an adequate description, then I expect that on your mantle back home somewhere is also a bunch of crystals for you to rub and make magic things happen.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the amount of a description you have right now. It's just
okay.
It's not even as vague. It's not even vague yet.
So what I would love for you to do is keep working on the thesis, and as you come across and build more of your case, I would love to be able to have an elevator pitch conversation that can adequately describe this so that I can apply it.
Well, I got I don't know if.
Well, like
every time I try to do that, it's so, and you're right. I need to work on that.
Sure, it's like mathematics. Basically, if I were to, I could in an elevator show you that 1 + 1 = 2, right? I'd say, you know what? If you want to learn more, we can apply more mathematics. But at least here, you can see proof of concept.
Sure.
So if you can work on that, I'm willing to have another conversation.
Great. Would you like my paper?
Okay. I'm going to be super real with you here. I have had people send me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of some of the wildest bullshit that you could possibly imagine. Actually, I've had some people go and have their wild, crazy bullshit published, self-published. They paid an independent publisher some of them are just photocopied scrawling, like fever dream type stuff.
Yeah.
I would much rather have a conversation with you about it because holy crap, if I open that door, I'm never going to get out.
To do something I've already done. You've asked me to do something I've already done.
Then
you said you want better definition. I have that.
Well, but when I applied it, you said I don't have enough. I need more.
No. I said you don't have enough with a sample size of 1. I didn't say I have enough.
No. I'm saying about myself, Eric Murphy.
Okay.
Richard said that Eric Murphy does not have enough definition because the sample size of 1. Right? Right.
Oh, yeah. Expect not to.
I would actually, I took what you gave me and applied it. And you agree that if I were to assign that as homework, that I would absolutely come up with a whole bunch of prophecies that are off the wall and bonkers. Right?
No. What I said is you'd get the same 7 prophecies.
Okay. So here's what I'm going to do.
Get a whole bunch of different property. There's actually very few prophecies repeated many, 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 many times.
So if I were to go through and try and find an animistic prophecy in one of the holy books that has a creator deity, I should reliably come to the same 7 prophecies that you did.
Yes. When you say animistic, are you saying the practitioners call it animistic?
I'm saying that any way that somebody wants to use that word, it should help us get there.
You can't look at it that way because they think it's a history lesson.
Then Richard is the only person who can hold this belief because I need Richard to tell me whether or not it's applicable.
No. I can write down just a set of rules and you can go apply it anywhere you like.
Right. Do you know how many people, have you heard of the Bible Code?
What's that?
Have you heard of the Bible Code?
Yes. And yes, I understand it's disparate. And yes, you can apply it anywhere. And Dr. Joshua Bowen found that Dr. Joshua Bowen is actually the Christ. True story. According to the Bible.
But they could also write down the rules. You can apply it and come up with the same
their own rules. Yeah.
Yeah. So how am I to determine that you're different?
Well, let's see. I don't know.
And
I think you're gonna have to edit this part out. This part out, Eric, because I'm just dying for a cigarette and a cup of coffee, man. I got it.
Dude, honestly, after a certain amount of time, I'm torturing people. So how about this?
Well, I'm a smoker and I like coffee, but I'm like starting to have a nick fit.
No worries. You do you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
I genuinely did. And I hope that I wasn't too insulting when I said that you're saying I'm lying. It's not the same thing as me saying I think you're accusing me of being a liar.
I understand that.
It's not the same thing at all. I don't think you would even do that.
Which is why that led to the questioning that I gave you, which is why I responded the way that I did. I wanted to flesh that out.
I hope it was clear at some point in the conversation. That's not what I meant.
The truth can be cruel. The truth can be crass. I just want to know as many true things and as few false things as possible. And I want to have...
Is that right?
Yeah.
You believe that?
Yeah.
You really mean it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. I think I mean it. It's hard to say.
I believe you. I just want to investigate whether or not I should as well. And so far, I don't think I should. And I think you agree with me.
No, I would hope you wouldn't.
Right.
That's honest. I would hope that right now, you were like, you studied the Bible. You know it pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know the parable of the seed sower?
Yeah. Are you talking about the different soils that, yeah.
Exactly. And the raven and the rocks and the sand and the good soil. Dude, I do not waste my time on rocks, ravens, and sand. I just don't. Now, for a year, I waded through a bunch of sand. And I promise you it was no fun.
And
where I just get strawmanned time after time after time. You can watch like my first appearance on Atheist Edge. It was horrible. Like they quoted me constantly. I couldn't even get a word in edgewise to defend myself. And I've been through that.
Yeah,
and I've talked to rubbers, and I've talked to those folks. They're beautiful, and I believe they're going to understand the truth at some point. But if I could convince somebody in 2 hours that what I'm saying is true, then I'll already walk away and forget the whole thing and never try again. Because next week, they're going to be smoking hemp or something. I don't know. Whatever. They're going to be crushing flowers and stuffing them in their ears. I don't know.
I think that a good tool can be applied, and its reliability will determine how much we should be using it. It's the same with the laws of logic. And I can tell you the laws of logic pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle. A thing is what it is, isn't what it isn't, and can't be what it is and what it isn't at the same time. Now you can go and you can apply that. And you know what?
Sure.
That's enough.
I think it is. Well, it gets a little bit more technical than that. But yes, those three root things, they're enough. That's good.
Yeah, and I don't think that you should have a shelf full of crystals if I were to convince you that quickly, because I think that upon application, you're going to find that accurately describes the universe that we're in. I'm asking for a tool that I can do the same thing with, that I can apply, and that's accurately going to describe the universe that we're in. Because if that tool belongs in my toolbox, I want it there. And if it doesn't, I want you to take it out. Because I want you to know as many true things and as few false things as possible.
I'll tell you right now when you're going to prove this. I'll tell you right now when you're going to prove this. You're going to prove this on this thing right here. Lowers itself from outer space. That's when you're going to know this is true. You're not going to know one moment before. You're not. I'm sorry.
But that means that any conversations with you are not fruitful.
No, that's not true. I am softening the blow.
I believe that you believe that.
It's not fruitless. It's fruitless for now. I'll agree to that.
Then when that thing lowers itself from the sky, we'll have our next conversation. I'm sorry.
We'll have what?
We'll have our next conversation. Because if
I can respect that.
If we're just spinning our wheels.
No.
Even if you think you're softening the blow, it's spinning our wheels.
Yeah.
So, Richard.
That's fair.
Richard, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you luck and health and happiness in relationships. And as you move forward in your life, I want you to know as many and learn and have the best tools available. And I think that you and I think I've listened to you charitably.
Certainly.
I think that you as a person seem like a really sweet guy. I think that what you came to as a conclusion, I wouldn't advise anybody towards it. Because I think that it hasn't gotten us
Pretty
there.
sure I wouldn't either.
Yeah. That said, I'm going to keep working on it, because if I should believe it before whatever the hell that thing behind you is lowers itself from the sky, then I really hope you give me a call. That said,
if that's the only qualifier, I really enjoyed it. I appreciate your hospitality. I really do. You've been more patient with me than many, and kudos to you for that. Seriously.
So I'll tell you, right?
And ultimately, it's still true that this can't be proven until it happens.
Then it's not reliable. It's not going to get us anything if it that's just not how we apply that to anything else in the world. And I can tell you right now, I'm going to premiere this video, and the people who are watching live are going to have been bashing their heads into walls for the last 2 hours or so. And here's the use that I see in it. Because while those people who are watching may have been bashing their heads into walls this entire time, what I hoped to do, what I feel like we did, is I stretched this out so that we can see all of the flaws in it, so that we can see all of the places in it where, hey, you know what? Here's what, here's where thinking can maybe take a left turn, or here's where a tool can maybe be applied that maybe shouldn't belong in that toolbox just yet. And I think there's value to it. And I think that people can honestly believe things, and that doesn't make them liars.
Well, I have to say that from what you believe is true presently, that's beautiful, and I thank you for that.
I appreciate that, brother. I hope you have a good rest of your night. Go have a cigarette, and I'll talk to you next time.
Feel free to use all of it, and if ever I get the chance, unedited, okay?
Oh,
whatever
sure.
you make is fine.
Absolutely. I really don't want to cut this. If it is unwatchable for some reason, I'll cut it together and shoot you a copy. That way you can see it and we can agree on it before it goes out.
No, I already agree on all of it unedited.
Sounds good to me.
So whatever you do is fine.
All right.
Peace and respect, sir.
Absolutely. Take care, brother. Okay. I'm back. And you know what? We're going to meet them where they're at. We're going to talk to them. And even if it may seem fruitless, the fact is, these are things that people believe. These are reasons that people are giving. And it's important. It's important that we listen, because it's important that we're making sure that we're not following those same mistakes in other parts of our lives. I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes, and I'm sure I gave way more room than I needed to during this conversation, but the result of that conversation is one that I think is good. I think we have a lot of work to do, but I think we've done enough for today. If you like what I do, please consider supporting me. The links, I'm sure, have been in the live chat, and they're definitely in the description. I know we're all trying to brave it through this COVID-19 virus. It personally has cost me my job. So if you want to see continued content, please consider going to patreon.com/Eric Murphy. If you can't, that's totally fine. Like and share, and let's get this out there. Let's improve the conversation, and let's elevate it to one where things stand or fall on their own merits. That said, the following are the list of patrons that I have. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time.